Hi guys, I'm Colin Reid. Welcome to today's presentation, which we've called Defending to Win. And in particular, we're going to talk about a couple of scenarios: defending early, setting a trap, in which we're going to try and win the ball high up the pitch. And then we'll progress on to defending in the mid-block and trying to win the ball in a deeper area, sort of in a central area. So, first and foremost, for those that don't know about me, today I've got Mauricio with me. We're going to present some graphics on the second part, but initially we're going to run over some scenarios on the pitch. And it's really important with your players, like I say, to get them to work on the various aspects of where you're going to win the ball and why you're going to win the ball up the pitch. And then obviously we'll talk about why we're going to win it deeper, and more importantly, how we're going to win it deeper. So, like I said, Mauricio's going to put a couple of pictures up on the presentation now. My background and history is predominantly as a player. I started playing, never made it as a professional, went straight into coaching. So I've held various positions within football, in the male game and female game. So you can see me here at Millwall as the ladies' first team coach. I do a lot of coach education, and I've worked in various countries, lots of countries in Europe and in the States as well, going back many years ago. This is me coaching at the National Stadium in Poland. And this side that you can see me with here is a junior side of where Lewandowski played. So fantastic stadium in Warsaw. You can see a couple of other photographs here. Besides this one, working, next one please, Mauricio. This is just presenting in Wrocław. I remember delivering to many coaches out there. I've delivered to many cities in Poland. And also, next photograph, please, Mauricio. Just this is working with the girls recently at Millwall. And the girls, you know, have been great to work with, and particularly working on what we're working on today, which has given us lots of success. So, moving on, just want to talk about the big picture. So, whilst I prefer to talk about the 1-4-3-3 system, and the reason I like to play it is just a brief overview of what I've done with the other presentations, is most teams will play a 4-2-3-1. As you can see, the yellows are playing a 4-2-3-1, and that's why I prefer to play 4-3-3. Yeah, and we number them accordingly: 2, 5, 6 and 3, 4, 8 and 10 central midfields, 1 deep midfield player, 2 higher ones, and a 7, 9, 11. It's really important to understand my ideas and my philosophy around it, because as you'll see from the graphic in a minute that comes up, we've got a 2v1 situation here, and around here, obviously having a back four against the front three, we have a spare player and a goalkeeper that you can see high up the pitch. But it's in this area that's really important for me. And people say, why do you play a 1 and a 2? I think it's a simple reason that most teams will play a 2 and a 1. And that can morph and change if we need to. And obviously, if you look, my 9 will be outnumbered, and my 7 will play against their 3, and 11 will play against their 2. So it's a great system to play. I'll emphasise again, systems do not win games, it's players. So it's our responsibility to educate our players and know their roles and responsibilities. So, Richard, if you can put the next graphic up, which really epitomises what we've just shown you. And in this graphic, you can see who plays against who. So it's pretty evident in here. Yes, please, Mauricio. As you can see from this diagram here, you have an understanding, and it's to emphasise that initially you do play directly against the opponent. So if we start at the back, you can see the 5 and the 6 will play against the 9, and depending what side of the pitch the ball's on, the 6 will either be marking and the 5 would cover, and vice versa on the other side of the pitch. Okay? You'll see the 3 will play against the 7, and obviously on the other side the 2 and 11. And in midfield, it's really important to understand our deep midfield player will have the responsibility of playing against the 10, as you can see on your diagram, and our 10 will play against their 4, and our 8 will play against their 8. And again, the 7 ultimately has a responsibility when the ball's in a wide area, if the 3 gets forward, to track that runner, and same on the other side, 11 with the 2. Now, obviously our 9's outnumbered. So in the big grand scheme of things, that's who they play against. But what I want to emphasise today is, bringing you back, is if you look and we push them front 3 up, okay, in this half of the pitch is an 8v6, and we've showed that in the playing out. So really, there's an overload for the opponents playing out from the back. And it's for us to understand that we don't just stay with one immediate opponent. Depending on where the ball goes and what happens, people will morph and change. So I'll just give a brief example. When the ball's over here, we expect the players on this side of the pitch, the furthest side of the pitch, will start to come in here and, of course, leave those furthest away. And it's educating players who goes where, when, and why they do that. And it's a little emphasis on why. Well, if the ball's on this side of the pitch and we get some pressure on it, the ball can't be transferred. So the scenarios you're going to see today will show the responsibilities. What I also want to say at the start of the session is, when I see session plans, I often see novice coaches, when they're playing against other people, put people right up against other players. See that on many session plans, and it worries me about lack of understanding. So if you look where the ball is, all of the players know who they're immediately playing against, and what you'll see is the goal kick may go long, so the most important space would be the rear. Yeah, the space in behind us is essential that we've got that covered. And if any balls are played directly in behind, that we are able to be first to them. And in doing that, our fullbacks are positioned inside of the wingers they're playing against. It gives us that compactness in a central area. And again, coming into midfield, our 4, our deep midfielder, is obviously goal side and in a central area there. If you look at our 8 and 10, I've just positioned them on the inside of their immediate opponent, and obviously goal side. And 7 and 11 will be on the inside of their immediate opponent, and obviously not starting too close. And again, the 9 is outnumbered. He or she will just split them. It's really important to understand about what we talk about in the coaching environment, and it's really important if you are doing your UEFA B or A, or even starting off on your level 2, what a good starting position is in relation to our immediate opponent. So what you're going to see now, I'm going to work through a number of scenarios, and as I say, in part 2 of the session, they'll come up on graphics and they'll move, but I'm going to show my idea of how to win the ball back early. So we can't stop their goalkeeper just going long and direct. And, you know, if we do that, then obviously I'd like to think that we would regain the possession. And looking at that setup, then I'm sure we would. Now, what we're trying to do, like we called it defending to win, defending early, stroke defending high, setting a trap. They all have different titles, but it's the same thing. Can we encourage our opponents to play out? But when they do play out, have we got coordinated ideas of who does what, enabling us the best possible chance to try and win the ball high up the pitch, thus enable us to go and get an end product, a shot. And we know that certain sides will play out, and that's not a problem. So what I'm going to show you today is different scenarios of how we can win the ball early. So first one is, everybody knows who initially they're playing against, and we would work on this in training, and we've done that a lot last season. So let's say, for example, we encourage them to play out. Little traits are, if we know this person was not as good in possession as the 6, we could offset and push our 9 in there to almost actively encourage the opponents to play to the 5. And equally, we could do the same. If this 6 left-sided central defender wasn't too comfortable, but was willing to accept the ball, then we could offset and just sort of almost make the goalkeeper's mind up to play there. So although we're not in control of the ball, we don't need to be in control of the ball and in control of possession to control the game. And it's really important for coaches to understand that, you know, you can make people's minds up. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So the first scenario when we go into the graphics will be in there. And what I want you to imagine is, yes, the 10 is playing against the 4 and the 8 plays against the 8. Now, this is very evident and prevalent in how Manchester City and Barcelona defend. And some people say it almost morphs in a 4-4-2. So the scenario is, ball goes in there. The job of the 9 is to stop the switch. He's not going to press the ball, because if he presses the ball, it can go into the goalkeeper and out there. So his job primarily is to stop the switch. He's not going to put any pressure. But when he or she blocks off that line, yeah, and it can't be transferred, and we encourage the 5 to go forward, that's his job, okay? But as soon as that ball is on its way, our 10 is going to, as the ball travels, actually leave the 4, yeah, and run from an inside position to an outside position, trying to pressurise. And what he or she is trying to do is, if they've come from in to out, but they block that line off, they're trying to encourage, not only do they block the pass to the 4, although the 4 might move, he is saying, or she is saying, can we actively keep it in between these 2 players? Okay? So obviously the 10 would move and our 4 would move, and we'll show some scenarios. But as that ball actually travels, our 10 would do that. And it's almost like, as some people have pointed out, like a 4-4-2 now. Yeah? That highest midfield player just breaks. Now, because we know it really can't be transferred over here, these players now, if you look, you could say, well, if that 10 is played round, they could quite easily get out. So as that ball is rolled, the 10 tries to get some pressure and block this line of pass off. The 9 stopping the switch. Now the 8 would need to come across. And whilst there's no immediate pressure on here, this 7 has a job to do, because primarily the players furthest away from the ball, it could be transferred. It could be transferred. So the players furthest away are really important, that they can do 2 jobs. Can the 7 get out to the 3? If there was a little space in here, could he or she put some pressure on? But the closer, and if this 10 comes from in to out, we'll actively encourage the 5 to go in here. So now it's about recognising that. The 8 would like to start to mark on the outside shoulder. The 7 is just coming across in here, because we know the ball can't go transferred out there now. Okay? And the 4 gets on the outside shoulder. And again, they would slide across. Our 6 was wary of this long ball in the channel and would mark goal side and ball side. Okay? And our 5 would get across and offer cover to 6. And once we know it's getting on this area of the pitch. Now, obviously, if we can get immediate pressure on it, the first thing we'd like to think about is, this is all covered. However, if the centre half decides to play into the 2, our 11 is on the front foot, and it's as simple as, can we regain possession in there and look to drive it? So it's very basic, really. 10 goes and engages, puts some pressure on. We narrow off on this side of the pitch once we know it can't be delivered out this side, and can we pinch that? Okay, so you'll see that demonstrated later on. Now, we're not saying that's always going to happen. For obvious reasons now, it could be pressurised. And the closer the pressure is applied on the ball, the less likely the player in possession can get their head up and play forwards. So now we need to get tighter around the ball. And like we've said, that could allow us to intercept it. But what we're looking at now is where the ball's played and maybe drop behind the 2, so 11 can't get it. And once that's done, if this 2 does turn, the 10 really would sort of get in a half and half position. Yeah, so discouraging the 2 to play back to the 5. But now if we get some pressure on the ball and the 11 doesn't get too tight, thus allowing the 2 to play forward, we're now ready. If it's played in there, yeah, these players will start to come across, as we said. Can it get played in there? And the 8 is on the ball side shoulder of the 4. So if it does get played in there, he or she can intercept. And they're in an ideal position to intercept. Again, if the pressure's not too early, or the two's clever and takes their first touch away and manages to face up, yeah, the 10's ready to press the 5. The 8 is ready to press the 4, but the less pressure on the ball, the less likely you to go tight, and you encourage players to play there. But now, as you can see, that option opens up to play forward again, and if it is played in this sort of area by passing the 8, then the 4's looking to step in. So for me, just to recap, it's really important everybody knows their role, and in actually just reminding everybody what their role is, and I'll wind them back. The first thing is set the trap, drop off, allow our opponents to have an easy pass. However, when people say about pressing, when do you press? And the moment you press, when the ball travels, not when people have got it at their feet. So that trigger, if we talk about triggers, actively we're all set up, we know we're marking immediately, and if it did come into them directly, then we're going to apply pressure, yeah, wherever the goalkeeper plays it. So in marking and having good start positions, yeah, where we occupy this central area, we are hoping that they're going to play these short passes. But like I said, as that travels, this person's going to leave and block that pass off to the 4. The 4 may move, and that's what we're saying is it's having an understanding of being narrow, players actually moving on this side of the pitch once we know that the ball can't be played on this long diagonal. The further the 10 is away, the more likely is that the 9 and 7 are going to stay away. And the expression I use is space off. But once we get close and we get this pressure on and this player's head goes down, yeah, everybody knows their roles. They're starting to come across. They're starting to move across because the ball physically cannot go into that area. And people are looking to get on the outside, on the ball side of their immediate opponent, or the opponent that now changed. Obviously, they'll come to support it. So for me, it's really important that you practice this and that you're showing that the furthest 2 players away, yeah, in this example, for our own team, the 7 and the 8 are starting to move across the pitch in here to make it more congested, to get compactness, all the things we talk about on the ball, okay? So just, you'll see them scenarios in part 2. Yes, that can happen on the other side. And again, players just switch across. Now, as you can see again, and I'll just show you, these 3 players in here are very, 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 very important, as they all are. Yeah, they need to move. So just briefly, at some stage, the 10 can play against the 5. Yeah, and likewise on the other side, if the ball was transferred to the 6, then the 8 would go and engage there. But we'll come back to the right side. When the ball is on this side of the pitch, and we are going to get that, we can't leave the 4 on his own or on our own, just in case it is played round and they're out. And hence why that player would come across. And again, if we left the 7 out there playing against their immediate opponent, and it did come in there, they're free. Hence why the 7 comes across. So at different stages and at different parts of the game, it's important to understand that we morph. Yeah, we change. The ball rolls, players actually move when the ball's moving. Okay? So, hope that answers your questions on setting a trap. And like I said, we're trying to win it in here, and it could be going to the 2 intercept. If not, and we keep the pressure on, yeah, and we'll force it inside because, again, the reason we're going to get the 11 to force it inside is this is where we're strong. You know, we've got our bodies in here, and this is where we want to step in and win it. If we can win it in a central area, high up the pitch, then that puts us closer to goal. Lots of people have views, and that's a personal view. If you showed it down the line, yeah, you may win it back, but you're going to win it deeper, or you give them the opposition to turn you round, and then you're going back to your own goal. Hence why I like my wide players to show it inside towards where we're strong, where we've got cover, and obviously we need to understand the balance side of further away. Quick question before we move on to a mid-block, and for me it's really important to explain my philosophy. I've got a question that was asked of me, and it was said, what are your preferences for defending? Do you want to press early or do you defend late? That would depend who you're playing against for me. So if you know the opponents want to play out, I would actively encourage them to play out because I'd want to win the ball back. If we knew that the other team were very, very good at playing out, I'd still want to go and early doors in the game is try and win the ball back in a high position. If we didn't have no joy, then we need to know how to defend in a mid-block, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. And then also if we was playing against a far superior team to us, who really dominate possession like Barcelona, Man City, is you may well say, we'll try and win it back here. If we can't and we win it back here, great. But you may even set your stall out and say, we're going to defend deep, set a deep block, and we're going to play on the counter-attack. That's leaving loads of space for us to go into. So I don't have a preference. I would rather win it high up. So that is a preference. But what I'll say is you need to know how to defend in all different areas of the field. And like I've said, sometimes you'll be showing it wide and other times you'll be showing it inside. And that changes depending where you are and the situation. So just another question someone asked to me, what's the difference between a strategy and tactics? So I want you to think about that. A strategy may be we want to win the ball back high up because we know that team plays out. If the other team play direct and go long from goal kicks, our strategy might be is just to drop off and let them have it, go long and win this first ball in here and maybe the second. So a strategy for me is your plan. How are you going to win the ball back when you're out of possession, and how are you going to play in possession? So strategy is a plan. Tactics is how you execute that plan. So some people will play the same system and may want to show it inside. Some people may want to show it outside. So your tactics are, what are the roles and responsibilities of your players in order to execute your plan, to execute your strategy? And people have different thoughts on that. You know, some people may want to actually start off like that and say, right, you know, let's do that. Let's get our players in, and you might ping it out there. But that's down to the individual. There's not a wrong or right way. It may depend on the opposition. And if you've got analysts who study things, then there'll be patterns and traits in the opponents you play against. So, hope that's cleared it up on what strategy and what tactics are and what my own preferred preferences are out of possession to winning the ball back. Now we're going to come on to setting a mid-block. So, again, I'm just going to drop these back. I don't want you to think they're defending deep. It's just in relation to the area. So, a mid-block for me is the area where we're probably going to win it somewhere in that mid-third, okay? So what we're doing, you may call it you're setting a trap as well, but what you're in essence doing is dropping deeper, and I use the expression engaging. We try to engage and force the play in a higher area. What we're going to do here is a little bit different, and we're going to just drop off. And we're going to encourage them to have it, and a good team will obviously push up the pitch, and we're saying, let's put it a little bit higher, because we said we're engaging that mid-block. So just getting them reference points right for coaches. It's not a deep block. It's just trying to get you to see from the 4, 8 and 10 and the 7, 11's perspective. So for me, starting positions are really important. Yes, you have an immediate opponent to play against, and you have a line of engagement where you're actively, where the ball goes, the trigger for you to do what you're going to do. So for me now, I'm just changing my notes that I refer to, just to remind me of the various scenarios that we've set up. So if we have a look, we're dropping off, and like I said, it's an 8v6 scenario, because if their front three push up, or even if they push that person up, you've still got an immediate opponent to play against. But it is different. Sometimes, for me, this is easier to defend against because there's less space in behind. So I'm trying to push them up. There is space in behind, which allows the opponents, if we don't put pressure on here, to be able to turn you around and get runners to run in behind you, nines to run down the side of the centre halves, and wide players to run in behind fullback. So what I'll deal with first is we will drop off with a mid block. We'll encourage them to play out. And obviously, as he gets higher up the pitch, if there is no pressure, then they have the ability to play the ball in behind. So for me, the first line of defence we need to work on and coach is, if there is no pressure and they want to go direct, it's important to understand that these players need to drop off and deny this space in behind. So we talk about a sweeper keeper in behind, if any ball's going behind. We talk about the 9 being on the outside of the 6 being on the outside the 9. So if it was played in the channels, that he or she would be first to it. And having that good start position, being on the outside, and having pace is a good attribute. And we talked about the profiles of players. Same with the 3, obviously being on the inside of the 7. That's really important, and that sweeper keeper. Also, because there's a possibility of a long diagonal if there's no pressure on the ball, that the 5 will cover the 6. I'm not a person that wants to play on high and get our second central defender there and taking a chance of playing offside. So for me, the second central defender, should always be covering. And I say always, particularly in this scenario. And then my 2 would obviously not be level with my 5. He or she would be a yard or 2 in front and obviously tucked in. So there's my back 4. So anything played in behind, we don't want to be in a race. If we are in a race, we're going to be first to it because we've got good starting positions. Again, so I'll just put them out the picture. But before anyone says, oh, what about long balls? We've got them covered. Now, you've got your 4, 8 and 10 in midfield. Again, as the play is developing on this side of the pitch, we talk about players getting this side of their immediate opponent. Okay? Now, what we've done different now is, in essence, the 5 comes out with the ball, and the 9 really is to stop the switch. Once they get high up the pitch, they're not going to look to switch it. And then when we know it's going to be on this side, he or she would just start to come across. When the play is deeper, you might get that sort of scenario, and he just does that and says, no, we want you to come on this side. Again, this player might be weaker in possession, and therefore he's just staying away. So, but once it comes here, this player not start to move across because he knows the switch not occurring. But in a mid block, for me, whereas before we had our 8 or 10 going engaging the 5 or 6, it's now about the 11 saying, no, I'm going to get in the way of the 2, and I'm going to start to come and press you. Now, the danger you've got with that is, and the scenarios we've got, and we'll show you a bit later on, but if you look at that and we block that off, that becomes a spare player, the 2. And it could go in there and bounce out. We'll show that scenario in a minute. But all we're looking at now is, putting a bit of pressure on the ball. And as simple as, if he wants to play short, it's into the 4, then we're looking for our 10 to step in and win it. Okay? I think that's really important to show that you step in, and where you mark's really important. I see people when they draw session plans, put people up against people like that. You can't step in and win it. So when you mark, you'll mark goal side, but you might mark on the inside on some occasions. And there might be times where you mark on the outside. And in this occasion, I'm saying mark on the outside because this is where we're looking to get the ball. The 10 would probably come across. And again, with a 4, it may mark on the inside until we see where the ball going. But as he travels up and there's more pressure, you can step in and win it from the inside. No one's saying you can't, but you won't win it from behind. So it's really important to understand if I mark on an outside shoulder or inside shoulder, it's really important to understand at different times you'll mark on different shoulders. So the scenarios that we've set up really is, and I'll talk you through them later, 11 cuts off that ball, stop the switch, it's now coming in here. We now know that the less pressure on the ball, yep, certainly on this side of the pitch, we don't need to go tight. So the ball can't go out there. So we need to just, you know, it's going to come in that area. So the first scenario you see is going in there, stepping in and win it in a good area to counter-attack. Also, obviously in there, if the 4 was clever and steps inside, our 10 might go across a little bit. Now you've got that obviously ball up there. So now it's about, well, if it goes in there, can we step in and win it? Whether it's from the inside or outside, depending how wide the 10 goes. Yeah, the wider the 10 goes, the 4's more likely to be on the inside. The more central the 10 is, yeah, the more centre of the pitch, the more likely you are to mark on the outside. Yeah, so that's really important, this detail. Now, as you can see, I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios when we go on to it, and I'll talk you through it. And that is basically, can we step in and win it here? No, he might clear space to 4. The 10 might do half and half. It might go in there. Ideally, we want to step in and win it. Now, that doesn't always happen, but what you can see now, if that ball goes in there, okay, if we can't step in and win it, we need to prevent that ball being played forward and an opponent's turning. And in this scenario, ideally, you'll hear me say step in when the ball's gone past. Can we step in? That 4 will prevent turning and the 10 will tackle from the front. Okay, now I can see what you can see, and the obvious thing is, well, what about if in this scenario, okay, that the ball goes into 4 or 10, yeah, and it's bounced around the corner. Again, that's where 11's done that. It might go in there, it might even go in there and bounced out. Now you've got a free player. So again, these players will be moving across as the ball, and we know is going to stay on this side of the pitch. So once we get pressure on and it goes into 4, let's say it goes into 4 and turned round the corner, the 11 is now out the game. All that happens is, as that ball is with the 5, the 8 is coming across and the 7 is coming across. Yeah, and I have basic rules for the 7 and 11. And they are, when the ball's on the other side of the pitch to you, I want my 7 to be level with my 8. And vice versa. When the ball's on the opponent, other side of the pitch, I want my 11 to take their position off of their 10. Okay, our 10. So if it goes in there and we can't intercept it and it's bounced around the corner, all that would happen is our 10 would come out and engage. And if he does now, yeah, all we're trying to do is keep it on that side of the pitch. Now, if we can come from in to out and keep it on this side of the pitch, it now knows, we now know where it's going. Yeah, it's got to stay on this side of the pitch. And our 3 can get ready, and the closer the 10 gets, to go tight on the 7 and step in and win it. So we talk about making play predictable. Again, it might be that that ball goes into the 10, the 10 bounces it, and then the 4 would come across and engage. And then, like I said, you've now got other players, and once the ball goes behind you, you're trying to get the right side of the ball, and you're just getting them players to come across. So there's no, if the 4 has to come out and leave the 10 to go and engage the 2, which can happen, and does happen a lot, then the 8 just comes across. So for me, players need to understand, and you have to replicate these scenarios a lot in training to understand about sliding across the pitch, who goes and engages who. So hopefully, thank you for listening to the presentation on winning the ball high, early, setting a trap, and also the scenarios of working and winning the ball in a mid-block. Okay. In part 2 of the presentation, the graphics will come up and I will speak through them just to go through what we've done. Thanks for listening. and look forward to you watching part 2. Thanks very much.